Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to kick off our presentation today. We're going to explore a fascinating topic, diversity in living organisms. This is the first slide, so I just want to briefly introduce what we'll be covering. We'll look at the incredible variety of life forms on Earth, understand how they are classified, and discuss their unique features. So, let's get started and dive into the amazing world of living organisms. Let's take a closer look at the contents of this slide. Here, we see an overview of the key topics related to the classification of living organisms. Starting with the need for classification, we recognize that it helps us organize the vast diversity of life into manageable groups. Moving on, the slide points out the five-kingdom classification system, which is a fundamental way to categorize all living beings. These kingdoms include Plantae, which encompasses all plants, and Animalia, which includes all animals. Within the animal kingdom, we further classify into groups like Mammalia, Reptilia, Aves, and so on. We also see that the basis of classification involves understanding different characteristics and features of organisms, whether they are Monera, Protista, or others. The slide emphasizes the importance of classification in understanding evolution and the relationships among organisms. Additionally, it mentions the concept of nomenclature, which is how we give scientific names to these groups to ensure clarity and consistency worldwide. Finally, you'll notice the mention of the hierarchy of classification, which organizes organisms into various groups from broad to specific. All of these points tie into our overall theme of how scientists systematically organize and understand the diversity of life on Earth. Let's explore why there is such a need to classify living organisms. As we know, living things have been evolving on Earth for millions of years, resulting in an incredible diversity. This diversity means that some organisms are tiny, like bacteria, which are just a few micrometers in size, while others, such as whales or redwood trees, can reach impressive heights of 30 to 100 meters. Trying to study all these organisms individually would be almost impossible. That's where classification comes in. By grouping organisms based on shared characteristics, we can simplify the study process. When we organize living beings into different categories according to their similarities, it becomes much easier to understand their relationships and functions. This process is called the classification of living organisms, essentially, arranging them into different groups based on common traits. For example, some trees like pines can live for thousands of years, while insects like mosquitoes might only live a few days. Or consider their appearance. Some organisms are completely transparent or colorless, making them almost invisible, whereas others are brightly colored and easily noticed. All these variations highlight the importance of classification. It helps us make sense of the vast diversity on Earth and understand how different organisms relate to each other within the bigger picture of life. Let's talk about the basis of classification of living organisms. The main characteristics we consider include whether they are made of prokaryotic or eukaryotic cells. This is fundamental because it helps us distinguish simple, single-celled organisms from more complex, multicellular ones. Next, we look at the level of body organization, especially in plants. For plants that produce their own food, we examine how their bodies are organized, whether they have tissues, organs, or systems. This level of organization is different from animals, which have their own unique features. Since plants make their food through photosynthesis, the characteristics used to classify them differ from those used for animals, which obtain their food from outside sources. We also consider whether the cells occur singly or group together to live as a whole. Some organisms are single-celled, while others are multicellular, forming complex colonies or bodies. For animals, we look at their level of body organization, whether they have simple structures or complex systems, and identify their special organs and their functions. These features are crucial because they help us understand how animals survive and adapt to their environments. Finally, we consider whether organisms produce their own food through photosynthesis or rely on external sources for nourishment. This aspect is key in differentiating various groups, especially plants from animals. All these characteristics form the basis for classifying living organisms into different groups, helping us make sense of the incredible diversity of life on Earth. Now, let's explore how classification and evolution help us understand the diversity of living organisms. Present-day complex living beings have gradually evolved from simpler forms over millions of years. This change in body design is largely driven by environmental factors and the need for adaptation. Some organisms, however, have retained their ancient body structures and haven't changed much over time. These are often called primitive or lower organisms, and they tend to have simpler forms and structures. On the other hand, there are species that have developed more recently and have more complex body designs. These are known as advanced or higher organisms. Recognizing these differences helps us understand the evolutionary process and how life has become so diverse on Earth. It ties into the overall theme of evolution as a continuous and dynamic journey of adaptation and change. Let's take a closer look at the hierarchy of classification, specifically the groups. Living organisms are broadly classified into 5 main kingdoms, which helps us understand the diversity of life on Earth. These kingdoms include Monera, Plantae, Protista, fungi, and Animalia. Within each kingdom, organisms are further divided into smaller subgroups at various levels such as kingdom, class, family, order, genus, and species. This hierarchical approach allows us to organize and categorize living things based on shared characteristics. Now, as we arrange organisms from broad groups to more specific ones, we ultimately arrive at the basic unit of classification, the species. A species is a group of organisms that are similar enough to breed with each other and produce fertile offspring, which is essential for understanding biological continuity. For example, in the case of animals, we might classify them into a kingdom like Animalia, then into a phylum or division, then into an order, genus, and finally species. This systematic classification helps scientists communicate clearly about different organisms and understand their relationships. Overall, this hierarchical system is fundamental because it organizes the incredible diversity of life into manageable, relatable groups, making the study of biology more structured and meaningful. Let's take a closer look at the table here, which summarizes the 5 kingdoms classification of living organisms. As you can see, it's a way scientists organize and categorize all life forms based on their characteristics. Starting with the Monera kingdom, these are all unicellular organisms, meaning each individual organism consists of just one cell. Think of bacteria, they're a prime example of Monera. Moving on to Protista, these can be multicellular, which means they're made up of many cells, like algae or protozoa. Then we have fungi, which are unique because they lack a cell wall, unlike the plants or bacteria. Fungi include molds, yeasts, and mushrooms, and their cell walls are made of chitin, not cellulose. Speaking of plants, the kingdom Plantae includes organisms with cell walls that contain cellulose. Plants are multicellular, photosynthetic, and form the basis of most food chains. And finally, Animalia, which are also multicellular, but unlike plants, they don't have cell walls. Instead, they have flexible cell membranes that allow for a wide range of movements and functions. This table really helps us understand the fundamental differences among these major groups of living things, and it ties into the overall theme of classifying life based on cellular structure and organization. Let's take a look at the Monera kingdom. These organisms are mostly prokaryotic, which means their cells don't have a defined nucleus. They are primarily unicellular, so each organism is just a single cell. Their cell structure can vary. Some have a cell wall, while others don't, which affects how they interact with their environment. Their mode of nutrition can be either autotrophic, meaning they produce their own food, or heterotrophic, meaning they rely on consuming other organisms or organic material. Some common examples include bacteria, blue-green algae, cyanobacteria, and mycoplasma. Bacteria are perhaps the most well-known, and they play crucial roles in various ecosystems. Cyanobacteria, also known as blue-green algae, are interesting because they can perform photosynthesis, just like plants. Mycoplasma are unique because they lack a cell wall, making them different from many other bacteria. Understanding these basic features helps us appreciate the diversity and importance of the Monera kingdom, especially since they are fundamental to many biological and ecological processes. Now let's talk about Protista. They are eukaryotic, which means their cells have a true nucleus. Most of them are unicellular, so each organism is just one cell, and they are mostly found in aquatic environments like ponds, lakes, or oceans. Some of these organisms have cilia or flagella, tiny hair-like or whip-like structures that help them move around efficiently in water. Their modes of nutrition can vary quite a bit. Some are autotrophic, meaning they make their own food through photosynthesis, while others are heterotrophic, relying on absorbing nutrients from their surroundings. Examples of Protista include algae, diatoms, and protozoans. Algae are fascinating because they are primarily photosynthetic, like plants, and contribute significantly to the oxygen we breathe. Diatoms are a type of algae with beautiful silica shell structures and are important in aquatic food chains. Protozoans, on the other hand, are more animal-like. They move actively and often feed on bacteria or other small particles. Understanding Protista is crucial because they form the foundation of many aquatic ecosystems and show us the incredible diversity of life at the cellular level. They truly highlight the complexity and interconnectedness of life on Earth. Let's talk about fungi. They are eukaryotic organisms, which means their cells have a nucleus, and they can be either unicellular or multicellular. Unlike plants, fungi do not have chlorophyll, so they can't perform photosynthesis to make their own food. Instead, they are heterotrophs, meaning they rely on other sources for nutrition. Typically, fungi feed on decaying organic matter, and because of this, they're called saprophytes. Think of them as nature's recyclers, breaking down dead material and returning nutrients to the environment. Some fungi also have a special relationship with algae. These are called lichens. In lichens, fungi and algae live together symbiotically, benefiting from each other. Examples of fungi include yeast, aspergillus, penicillium, and agaricus, which is common mushroom. And as I mentioned, lichens are a fascinating example of fungi living in partnership with algae. So, in summary, fungi are diverse, heterotrophic organisms that play an essential role in ecosystems, either by decomposing organic matter or forming symbiotic relationships. Now, let's talk about plantae, or plants. These are multicellular eukaryotic organisms, which means their cells have a nucleus. One key feature is that they have cell walls, providing structure and protection. Plants use a pigment called chlorophyll to carry out photosynthesis, the process that allows them to convert sunlight into energy. It's important to note that all plants fall under this single group, which is quite diverse. To better understand this diversity, plants are divided into 5 main groups: Thallophyta, Bryophyta, Pteridophyta, Gymnosperms, and Angiosperms. These groups differ in their structures, reproductive methods, and complexity, but they all share the fundamental characteristics we've just discussed. This classification helps us understand how plants have evolved and adapted over time, which ties into the broader theme of the diversity of life and how different organisms have specialized to survive in various environments. Now let's talk about the kingdom Animalia, which includes all animals. These are organisms that are multicellular and eukaryotic, meaning their cells have a nucleus. They lack chlorophyll, so they don't perform photosynthesis, and they also don't have cell walls like plants do. Instead, they are heterotrophs, relying on consuming other organisms for their energy. Animals are incredibly diverse, and to organize this diversity, scientists divide them into 10 main groups. These groups include Porifera, which are sponges, Coelenterata, like jellyfish and corals, Platyhelminthes, such as flatworms, Nematoda or roundworms, Annelida, which are segmented worms, Arthropoda, including insects, spiders, and crustaceans, Mollusca, like snails, clams, and octopuses, Echinodermata, which are starfish and sea urchins, Protochordata, the primitive chordates, and Vertebrata, which are animals with backbones. Understanding these groups helps us see how animals have evolved different structures and functions to adapt to their environments, which ties into the broader theme of biological diversity and evolution. Now, let's take a closer look at the classification of plants within the plantae kingdom. Plants are grouped into 5 main categories, which helps us understand their diversity and evolutionary relationships. The first group is Thallophyta, which includes simple, non-vascular plants like algae. Moving on, we have Bryophyta, or mosses and liverworts, which are also non-vascular but more complex than Thallophyta. The third group is Pteridophyta, or ferns and their relatives, which are vascular but reproduce via spores. Then we come to angiosperms, also known as flowering plants. These plants produce seeds enclosed within a fruit, and they represent the most diverse and advanced group of plants today. Finally, we have gymnosperms, or cone-bearing plants like pines and firs, which produce seeds that are not enclosed in a fruit. Understanding these 5 groups helps us see how plants have evolved from simple, non-vascular forms to complex, seed-producing structures. It ties into the overall theme of plant diversity and evolution, showing us the incredible adaptability and complexity of plant life on Earth. Now let's take a look at the Thallophyta group. These plants are quite unique because they don't have well-differentiated body parts, unlike other plant groups. Instead, they are generally called algae, and most of them are aquatic, meaning they live in water. For example, you can think of algae like Spirogyra, Ulithrix, Cladophora, and Chara. Each of these examples highlights the diversity within this group. Chara, for instance, is a type of freshwater algae that resembles small plants but lacks true roots, stems, or leaves. Ulithrix is another green algae that often forms slimy mats in ponds. Cladophora is characterized by its branched filamentous structure, and Spirogyra is famous for its spiral chloroplasts, which are visible under a microscope. These algae are important not only ecologically, as they produce oxygen and form the base of many aquatic food chains, but they also help us understand early plant evolution. So, in this slide, we're emphasizing how Thallophyta, especially these algae, are fundamental to aquatic ecosystems and evolutionary studies. Let's take a closer look at Bryophyta. In this group, the plant body is differentiated into stem and leaf-like structures, which is quite interesting. However, what's notable is that these plants lack specialized structures for conducting water and other substances throughout the plant. This means they don't have the complex vascular systems seen in higher plants. Because of this, they are often called the amphibians of the plant kingdom, highlighting their position as transitional forms. Some common examples include moss, like Funaria, as well as Marchantia and Rixia. For instance, Marchantia is a liverwort, and Rixia is a type of thalloid liverwort as well. Mosses like Funaria are also typical examples you might have seen growing in damp places. So, to sum up, Bryophyta plants have differentiated stems and leaves, but lack specialized conduction tissues, making them unique and important in understanding plant evolution. They occupy a crucial middle ground, bridging simple and more complex plant forms. Let's move on to Pteridophyta. In this group, you'll notice that the plant body is clearly differentiated into roots, stems, and leaves, which is a key feature. This differentiation allows the plant to perform various functions efficiently. Another important aspect is that these plants have vascular tissue, which is crucial for conducting water and other substances throughout the plant. This vascular system helps in supporting larger plant structures and efficient nutrient transport. Examples of Pteridophyta include ferns and Marsilia, among others. Ferns are quite common and well-known, and Marsilia, often called water clover, is another interesting example. Recognizing these features helps us understand how these plants are more advanced than simpler plants like algae or mosses, and they set the stage for the evolution of seed plants. Overall, Pteridophyta represent an important step in plant evolution, combining differentiation and vascular tissue to adapt to diverse environments. Now let's move on to Roman IV gymnosperms, also known as cryptogams. These are fascinating plants because they bear naked seeds, which is actually what the term gymnosperm means, gymno meaning naked and sperma meaning seed. Unlike angiosperms, their seeds are not enclosed within fruits. These plants are usually perennial, meaning they live for many years, and they tend to be evergreen, keeping their foliage year-round. They are also woody, with a tough, durable structure that supports their longevity. Some common examples of gymnosperms include pines, such as pinus and cycas, which are quite different in appearance but share this characteristic of naked seeds. For instance, pines are coniferous trees with needle-like leaves, and cycas or sago palms are prominent in tropical regions. These plants are significant because they represent some of the earliest seed-producing plants, bridging the gap between ancient plant groups and modern flora. Understanding gymnosperms helps us appreciate the diversity of plant life and their adaptations for survival across different environments. Now let's move on to V. angiosperms, also known as phanerogams. These are the plants that bear covered seeds, and the word angio means covered, while sperma means seed. That's why they are often called flowering plants. One important characteristic of angiosperms is that the plant embryo inside the seed has cotyledons, which are the first leaves that emerge during germination. Angiosperms are divided into two main groups based on the number of cotyledons present in their seeds. The first group is the monocots, which have seeds with a single cotyledon. Examples of monocots include rice, wheat, and maize. The second group is the dicots, which have seeds with two cotyledons. Examples here are green gram, peas, and tamarind. Understanding these differences helps us appreciate the diversity among flowering plants and their roles in agriculture and ecosystems. These distinctions are fundamental to classifying and studying plant biology as we continue exploring the plant kingdom. Let's take a closer look at the classification of plants, focusing on their body parts and other key features. First, we see that some plants, like those in Thallophyta, do not have differentiated body parts. They lack specialized structures like roots, stems, or leaves. Next, plants in Bryophyta also do not produce seeds, which is an important point to remember when studying plant reproduction. Moving on, cryptogams, which include groups like Pteridophyta, produce seeds but are still considered non-flowering plants. Within Pteridophyta, we find plants that bear naked seeds, meaning their seeds are not enclosed within a fruit, contrasted with plants that bear covered seeds, which are protected by fruit tissue. Now, looking at angiosperms, or flowering plants, we see a key difference based on their cotyledons, which are the first leaves that emerge from a germinating seed. Some have one cotyledon, known as monocots, while others have two, called dicots. Finally, we have gymnosperms, which are also seed-producing plants, but do not have flowers. They include most conifers and are an essential part of the plant classification system. Overall, these points highlight how plant groups are distinguished by their body structures, seed production, and reproductive features, helping us understand their diversity and evolutionary relationships. Now, let's explore how animals are classified into different groups within the kingdom Animalia. There are 10 main groups, each representing unique characteristics and evolutionary traits. These groups include Porifera, which are the simple sponges, and Nematoda, the roundworms. Moving on, Mollusca includes animals like snails and clams, known for their soft bodies. Vertebrata, of course, covers all animals with a backbone, such as mammals, birds, and fish. Then we have Coelenterata, which includes jellyfish and corals, characterized by their hollow bodies. Annelida refers to segmented worms like earthworms, and Echinodermata includes starfish and sea urchins, known for their radial symmetry. Platyhelminthes are flatworms, which are simple and soft-bodied. Arthropoda is a very diverse group that includes insects, arachnids, and crustaceans, animals with jointed limbs and exoskeletons. Finally, Protochordata represents the primitive chordates, which are important in understanding the evolution of vertebrates. These classifications help us understand the diversity within the animal kingdom and how different animals are related through their evolutionary history. Recognizing these groups allows us to appreciate the complexity and variety of life forms on Earth, tying back to our overall study of biological classification and evolution. Let's take a closer look at Porifera, commonly known as sponges. These are aquatic animals, and what's interesting is that they are non-motile, meaning they don't move around. Instead, they are attached to some solid support, like the ocean floor or rocks. One key feature of sponges is their porous body. They have pores all over their surface that form a canal system. This system is crucial because it helps circulate water through the sponge, bringing in food particles and oxygen necessary for their survival. Another important point is their hard outer skeleton, which provides structural support. Unlike many other animals, sponges do not have tissues. Their body structure is relatively simple. Some common examples include Spongilla, Cycon, and Euplectella. Recognizing these features helps us understand how sponges fit into the larger picture of aquatic life and the diversity within the animal kingdom. Let's talk about Coelenterata, a fascinating group of aquatic animals. These creatures live in water environments, and one key feature is that they have a body cavity called a coelom, which is like a central hollow space inside their bodies. Their bodies are made up of two main layers of cells, an outer layer and an inner layer, which are important for their structure and functions. Some of these animals live alone as single organisms, while others form colonies, like corals, which build beautiful reef structures. This diversity is quite interesting because it shows different ways these animals can live and interact with their environment. Examples of Coelenterata include corals, which are the reef builders, as well as jellyfish, sea anemones, and hydras. Each of these plays a unique role in their ecosystems, and studying them helps us understand the complexity of aquatic life. So, in essence, Coelenterata are a diverse and vital group in aquatic ecosystems, characterized by their body cavity, layered body structure, and their ability to exist both as individuals and colonies. This connects to our overall theme of exploring the diversity of life forms in water. Now, let's move on to the third group, Platyhelminthes or flatworms. These creatures are characterized by their flat bodies, which are bilaterally symmetrical. This means that if you cut them down the middle, the right and left halves would look similar. They are called triploblastic because they develop 3 layers of cells during their embryonic stages, which is a key feature of more complex animals. Interestingly, they do not have true body cavities, which sets them apart from many other invertebrates. Flatworms can be either free-living or parasitic, depending on the species. For example, planaria are free-living flatworms that you might find moving around in freshwater environments. On the other hand, some, like the liver fluke and tapeworm, are parasitic and live inside host organisms, often causing health issues. Understanding these differences helps us appreciate the diversity within the flatworms and their adaptations to different lifestyles. So, whether they live freely or parasitize hosts, their body structure and developmental features are quite fascinating and important in the study of invertebrates. Now let's move on to the nematoda, which are quite fascinating. They have cylindrical bodies, meaning their shape is long and tube-like. Their body is bilaterally symmetrical, so if you cut them down the middle, each side mirrors the other. They're also triploblastic, which means they develop from 3 germ layers during embryonic development. Interestingly, they don't have true body cavities, which sets them apart from some other worms. Although they have tissues, they lack real organs, so their body structure is quite simple. Most importantly, they are parasitic, meaning they live at the expense of a host. For example, species like Ascaris, which are roundworms, and Wuchereria, known as pinworms, are common examples. These parasites can cause various health issues, highlighting the importance of understanding their biology. So overall, nematoda are simple yet significant organisms in the study of parasitology and human health. Now let's take a closer look at the phylum Annelida. Their bodies are bilaterally symmetrical, meaning if you split them down the middle, each side mirrors the other. They are also triploblastic, which indicates they develop from 3 germ layers during embryonic development. One of their key features is that they have true body cavities, or coeloms, that are well developed and separate their digestive tract from their body wall. Another important point is that their bodies are segmented, with repeated units that give them flexibility and specialization opportunities. This segmentation is quite significant because it allows for the differentiation of organs within each segment, making them more efficient in their functions. You'll find these organisms both in water and on land, showing their adaptability to different environments. Some common examples include earthworms, nares, and leeches. For instance, Nares is a type of polychaete worm, which is often found in marine environments. Earthworms are well-known terrestrial annelids, vital for soil health. And leeches, which are often freshwater or terrestrial, are also part of this diverse group. So, understanding these features helps us appreciate the complexity and adaptability of annelids, fitting into the larger picture of animal diversity and evolution. Let's take a closer look at arthropoda, which are often called joint-legged animals. One of their key features is that their bodies are bilaterally symmetrical, meaning they have mirror image left and right sides. Their bodies are also segmented, which allows for greater flexibility and specialization of body parts. An important aspect to remember is that they have an open circulatory system. This means that instead of blood being confined to vessels, it flows freely within the body cavity, which is filled with blood. This type of circulatory system is common in many invertebrates, including arthropods. Now, one of the most distinctive features of arthropods is their jointed legs. These joints give them a lot of mobility and versatility, whether they're crawling, walking, or even flying. You can see some common examples of arthropods here, like prawns, crabs, cockroaches, spiders, scorpions, butterflies, houseflies, and centipedes. Each of these animals has adapted their jointed legs and segmented bodies to thrive in their particular environments. For instance, the housefly and butterfly are insects with wings, while spiders and scorpions are arachnids with 8 legs. Crabs and prawns are crustaceans, often found in aquatic habitats, and centipedes are known for their many legs and elongated bodies. All of these examples highlight the diversity within the Arthropoda phylum, but they all share that key jointed leg feature and segmented body plan that define them. This structural design is what makes arthropods some of the most successful and varied animals on Earth. Let's talk about mollusca, a fascinating group of animals. They exhibit bilateral symmetry, meaning their body can be divided into mirror image halves. This symmetry is a common feature among many animals, and it helps in coordinated movement and sensory processing. In mollusks, the coelomic cavity, which is the fluid-filled space within the body, is reduced compared to other invertebrates. This reduction is part of their unique body plan. Additionally, they show little segmentation, unlike some other invertebrate groups like annelids or arthropods. Mollusks have open circulatory systems, which means their blood flows freely within body cavities rather than through closed vessels. This system is efficient for their size and activity levels. They also possess kidney-like organs that help in excretion, maintaining their internal balance. Moving around, mollusks use specialized feet, which can be adapted for crawling, burrowing, or even swimming. For example, snails use a muscular foot to glide along surfaces, while octopuses have tentacle-like arms for movement and manipulation. Some common examples include snails, mussels, chitons, and octopuses. For instance, chitons have a segmented shell, mussels are known for their ability to attach tightly to surfaces, snails have coiled shells, and octopuses are highly intelligent with a soft body and remarkable mobility. To put it all together, mollusks are incredibly diverse, with a range of adaptations that make them successful in many environments. Their bilateral symmetry, reduced coelomic cavity, open circulatory system, and specialized feet are all key features that help them thrive. Let's talk about echinodermata, which are commonly known as spiny-skinned animals. These creatures are fascinating because their skin is covered with spines, giving them a distinctive appearance. They are exclusively marine animals, meaning they live in the ocean, and are typically free-living, not attached to other organisms or surfaces. Echinoderms are triploblastic, which means their bodies develop from 3 primary germ layers, and they possess coelomic cavities, fluid-filled spaces that help with their body functions. One of their most interesting features is the water-filled tube feet, which they use for movement. These tube feet operate hydraulically, allowing the animals to move smoothly across the sea floor. Another key point is their hard skeletons, made of calcium carbonate, providing support and protection. You probably recognize some common examples like starfish, sea urchins, feather stars, and sea cucumbers. Each of these showcases the diversity within the group, but all share these fundamental characteristics. Understanding these features helps us appreciate how echinoderms are uniquely adapted to their marine environments and how they fit into the broader picture of marine biodiversity. Now let's move on to protochordata, which is a fascinating group. These organisms exhibit bilateral symmetry, meaning their body can be divided into mirror image halves along a single plane. They are also triploblastic, so they develop from 3 germ layers: ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm, which is a key feature of more complex animals. They possess coelomic cavities, which are fluid-filled spaces within the body that play important roles in movement and organ development. One of the most distinctive features of protochordates is the notochord, a long, rod-like structure that runs along their back. This notochord provides support and acts as a sort of internal skeleton, to which muscles are attached, aiding in movement. Some notable examples include Balanoglossus, Amphioxus, and Herdemania. For instance, Balanoglossus is a hemichordate that exhibits these characteristics, while Amphioxus is often called a lancelet and is considered a primitive chordate. Herdemania is another interesting genus within this group. These features highlight how protochordates serve as a bridge between simpler invertebrates and more advanced vertebrates, emphasizing their importance in understanding evolutionary development. Now let's take a closer look at vertebrata, or vertebrates. These animals are characterized by having a vertebral column, which is essentially a backbone, and an internal skeleton that provides structure and support. They exhibit bilateral symmetry, meaning their body can be divided into mirror image halves, and they are triploblastic, with 3 primary tissue layers during development. Their bodies also have coelomic cavities, which are fluid-filled spaces that house organs, and their body structure is highly differentiated into tissues and organs, making them quite complex. Typically, their bodies are divided into 4 main regions: the head, neck, trunk, and tail, which helps in understanding their body plan. A key feature is that they have 2 pairs of fins or limbs. These are essential for movement and stability, especially in aquatic environments. Speaking of which, their respiration methods differ depending on their habitat. Aquatic vertebrates breathe through gills, while land-dwelling ones use lungs. Another important point is that their sexes are separate, meaning they are generally either male or female, not hermaphroditic. Vertebrates are grouped into 5 main classes: Pisces, Amphibia, Reptilia, Aves, and Mammalia. Each class has unique features, but all share these fundamental vertebrate characteristics, making them a diverse and fascinating group that plays a vital role in the overall animal kingdom. Now let's talk about Pisces, or fishes, which are fascinating aquatic creatures. These animals live entirely in water, and their bodies are typically covered with scales or plates that help protect them. They breathe through gills, which allow them to extract oxygen from the water efficiently. You'll notice that their bodies are streamlined, meaning they are designed to move smoothly through water, aided by their fins. These fins are crucial for steering and stability as they swim. Fishes are cold-blooded animals, so their body temperature varies with the surrounding water. Their hearts have only 2 chambers, which is quite different from the 4-chambered hearts seen in mammals and birds. Most fishes lay eggs, and from these eggs hatch their young ones, continuing the aquatic life cycle. Some fishes, like sharks and rays, have skeletons made of cartilage, a flexible and lighter material. Others, like tuna and rohu, have skeletons made of bones and cartilage, which provide more support and structure. For example, the electric ray and stingray are special types of fishes with unique features, like generating electric shocks or having flat bodies. In the case of sharks, they are well-known predators with cartilage skeletons that make them lighter and more agile in water. Fish like rohu and tuna are popular in our diets and are examples of bony fishes with strong skeletons. Understanding these differences helps us appreciate the diversity and adaptations of fishes in aquatic environments. Now let's take a closer look at amphibia, or amphibians. These fascinating creatures are quite versatile, as they can be found both on land and in water. Unlike some other animals, They do not have scales. Instead, their skin is smooth and moist because they have mucus glands that keep it that way. This moist skin is essential for their respiration and overall survival. Amphibians are cold-blooded, which means their body temperature depends on the environment around them. Their hearts are three-chambered, consisting of 2 atria and 1 ventricle, which helps in their circulation, but is less efficient than in warm-blooded animals. Respiration in amphibians can occur through gills or lungs, depending on their life stage and habitat. For example, tadpoles breathe through gills when they are aquatic, but adult frogs and salamanders use lungs or even their skin for breathing. Most amphibians lay their eggs in water, which provides a safe environment for their developing offspring. Some common examples of amphibians include frogs, toads, and salamanders. Each of these has unique features, but they all share these fundamental characteristics. So, in summary, amphibians are adaptable creatures that bridge the land and water worlds, with specialized skin, breathing methods, and reproductive strategies that reflect their dual lifestyle. Now, let's take a closer look at reptilia, or reptiles. These creatures are quite fascinating because they have scales covering their bodies, which help protect and retain moisture. They breathe through lungs, unlike amphibians that often rely on their skin for respiration. One of the key features of reptiles is that they are cold-blooded, meaning they can't regulate their body temperature internally and often rely on the environment to warm up or cool down. Most reptiles have a 3-chambered heart, which is efficient for their needs. However, crocodiles are an interesting exception because they have a 4-chambered heart, similar to birds and mammals, which supports their active lifestyle. Reptiles are oviparous, meaning they lay eggs, and these eggs have hard, protective coverings to withstand water and environmental conditions. This adaptation helps ensure their embryos develop safely. Examples of reptiles include snakes, turtles, lizards, crocodiles, and even flying lizards. Each of these demonstrates the diversity within this class. For instance, snakes are limbless and highly specialized, while turtles have a protective shell. Lizards display a wide range of sizes and habitats, and crocodiles are known for their powerful build and aquatic nature. So, when we think about reptiles, it's their unique combination of physical features and reproductive strategies that really stand out. They are an essential part of the animal kingdom, connecting various habitats and ecological roles. Now, let's talk about aves, or birds. Birds are warm-blooded animals, which means they can regulate their body temperature independently of the environment. They have a 4-chambered heart, just like mammals, which helps in efficient circulation. They breathe through lungs, and their respiratory system is quite specialized for flight. One of the most distinctive features of birds is their outer covering of feathers, which provides insulation and aids in flight. Speaking of flight, their 2 forelimbs are modified into wings, allowing them to fly. And of course, birds lay eggs, which is how they reproduce. Some common examples include crows, sparrows, pigeons, ducks, storks, and ostriches. For instance, the crow, sparrow, and pigeon are small birds we see often in urban areas. The ostrich, on the other hand, is a large flightless bird native to Africa. The stork and duck are also interesting. Storks are known for their long legs and migratory habits, while ducks are versatile and found in both freshwater and coastal environments. Understanding these key features helps us appreciate how birds are uniquely adapted to their environments and how they fit into the broader animal kingdom. Mammalia, or mammals, are a fascinating group of animals that are characterized by several unique features. One of the most important is that they are warm-blooded, meaning they can regulate their body temperature internally, which allows them to survive in a wide range of environments. They also have a 4-chambered heart, which is highly efficient for pumping oxygenated and deoxygenated blood separately, supporting their active lifestyles. Another key feature of mammals is the presence of mammary glands, which produce milk to nourish their young. This is a critical adaptation that provides the necessary nutrition for their offspring during early development. If we look at their skin, it's covered with hairs and sweat glands, which help in temperature regulation and sensory functions. Most mammals give birth to live young, which is a significant trait setting them apart from many other animal groups. However, there are exceptions like the platypus and echidna, which lay eggs. You might recognize some common examples such as cats, rats, dogs, lions, tigers, whales, bats, and humans. All these features, being warm-blooded, having a four-chambered heart, producing milk, and their skin characteristics, highlight how mammals are well adapted for survival and nurturing their young. These traits also connect to the broader theme of evolution and adaptation in the animal kingdom. Now, let's talk about nomenclature, which is essentially the system used for giving scientific names to all living organisms. This is important because it allows scientists worldwide to identify and communicate about species without confusion. The system used is called binomial nomenclature, and as the name suggests, it involves two parts. The first part is the name of the genus, which groups species that are closely related, and the second part is the specific name of the species itself. This system was introduced by the famous scientist Carolus Linnaeus, and it's still in use today because it provides a clear, standardized way of naming organisms. For example, the scientific name of humans is Homo sapiens. Here, Homo is the genus name, indicating our broader family of related species, and sapiens is the specific species name. Understanding this system is crucial because it connects directly to the overall theme of biological classification and how we organize the diversity of life on Earth. It makes it easier for scientists everywhere to be on the same page when discussing different organisms.